I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. We have other meetings that are competing with this meeting as we're getting to that time of the session when several meetings take place at one time. If Representative Hanna will go ahead and ask prayer for us, number 18.
Yes,
Thank you.
Let's pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunities that you have given us. We ask you that you give us, guide us, and direct us so that we may do the best possible for this state. Guide us and direct us in the path that we may go. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. The usual announcement is turn off your cell phones, et cetera, please. And I want to welcome a new member to our committee. I told him, welcome to the baptism of fire, because that's what it's going to be. But Representative Nimmer, if you'll just take a second and introduce yourself to us. You're number 26. Okay.
Well, good morning. Is my mic on? Chad Nimmer from District 178. I was just sworn in very shortly ago on a Wednesday morning last week, and came in midterm for a special election. And all the freshmen have named me the rookie, so I'm affectionately known as the rookie now. And first day in committee here on natural resource, and just looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and just jump right into our legislation. This is the first time that we've had legislation, and I have a couple of resolutions I'm going to take first before we get to the meat of the bill. And first of all, I need my committee reports. Representative, what we'll do is just have each of you report the activity of your committee, and then I'll choose the order in which we do our bills. So, do you have your report? Okay.
Madam Chair, the Environmental Policy Subcommittee met and considered Senate Resolution 15 and recommended do pass.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. Representative Manning.
Madam Chair, your subcommittee on resource management had taken up two measures this week and last week too, and after deliberation voted to recommend that the following action be taken at today's committee meeting. House Bill 274 by Representative Nix, a due pass by committee substitute LC 255855S, and House Resolution 381 by Representative McKillop, due pass by committee substitute LC 944412S.
Thank you, Representative Manning. And to Representative Nix, he is our vice chair of our committee, and I don't see Senator Tollison here today, so I said if he could make this meeting, I would present his bill. So I'm going to have Representative Nix wear two hats. So in the beginning, we'll do Representative McKillop, then if you'll come preside while I present Senator Tollison's bill. Thank you. Let's begin. I'm shifting through my papers here. House Resolution 381, Representative McKillop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May it please the members of the committee. I bring before you House Resolution 381. It is an urging resolution for Congress, so we all know how those go. But what this resolution does, in short, is requests Congress to take some action to update the Toxic Substances Control Act, which was from 1976. They haven't done a comprehensive review of the chemicals that are in use, that are produced in this country, that are imported into this country since that year. I was 6 at that time, and so the amount of development...
We're not going to do age.
As I'm sure you were, Madam Chair.
I wasn't born yet.
So this is a committee substitute. Our committee aide Dan O'Connor found some grammar corrections for us, and what this does is ask them to go through and do a comprehensive review of the chemicals that are in use to make sure that the public has easy access to the health and safety information, to make sure what chemicals and potential risks they are to not only adults but to specifically children, and to ask them to systematically prioritize chemicals for purposes of assessing their safe use. Just to update the laws. It's been 35 years and it's about time. So what this would do is ask all of our delegation from the state of Georgia to just pay attention to this and look forward and see if we can't push this forward through Congress. So I'd appreciate your consideration. Happy to answer any questions, although it more or less speaks for itself.
Thank you. Let me see if I have any questions for you. Representative Manning.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, let me check and see if I have any more. I do have a couple of questions. Number 26, just introduce yourself, please. Oh, you we're going to do I guess it didn't turn off your light. Number 20. Oh, the broken one is number 27. All right, Representative Manning, back to you. Number 19.
Madam Chair, I recommend that we do pass LC 944412S, House Resolution 381 by substitute.
And I have a second. Any more discussion or questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Representative McKillop. And Vice Chairman Nix, I do not see. Why don't you just preside from that spot? That might be the easiest for you. What's your number?
Number 1.
Number 1? Okay. Now let me shift hats here. Hunting for the bill. Senator Tollison presented to Representative Hardin's subcommittee Senate Resolution 15. There's a brief history to this while I present the bill. This was part of the legislation that we passed last year, the Comprehensive Water Stewardship Act. The House will remember its work on the bill with House Bill 1094, but it was passed through Senate Bill 370. Essentially, the study committee met one time, and it was after the elections. And at that time, it was determined that with the change in leadership and all at the state level, uncertainty of the budget, and not having data from all of our regional water councils, that we needed to continue our study, but we have to reconstitute the committee. So this is a language from last year. It just has a date this year of December 31st to sunset. And any questions? I entertain.
No questions?
Okay.
If not, I would entertain a motion. Got a do pass? Got a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, I think we have passed that resolution.
All right, Mr. Nix, what I've done is I've given you 2 softballs, and so now you get the hard ball. So you
Okay.
get to go present 274, I believe
All right.
it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to those who are new to the committee, in our subcommittee hearings, we go in depth with all of our bills. We have public testimony. Our committee takes its time and asks the questions. It essentially does our foxhole grunt work on a piece of legislation. When it gets to our point at the full committee meeting, we hope it's been fully vetted, but the process now is that the author presents the bill and that the committee itself asks the questions. We're a rather large committee, so as we try and keep up with our buttons as they're pushed, when we're through, we'll go all the way through the bill and then entertain questions, and we will try and keep up with the order of questions, allowing each member the opportunity first round to ask questions, and if they have more than one, we'll go back to them. Thank you. Representative Nix.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No.
Oh, okay. Now, am I on? Okay, thank you. I'd like to present House Bill 274, and I'd like to give just a brief background on the bill, and then we'll go through it section by section. Last year, I brought House Bill 1059, which was a bill that included a provision to allow yard trimmings to go into lined municipal solid waste landfills which had a methane recapture and use system. During the course of the debate of that bill, we found out that the EPD had asked me not to go with that because they wanted some more time to study it, so we actually pulled that out. We passed a bill that had some major minor modification changes so that it would make it easier for our landfills to be able to do recycling on site, and the director had promised me he would take a look at the putting the yard trimmings into those landfills. We had that discussion over the summer, and this bill brings that provision back. So what we've got in 274 is the provision to allow lined municipal solid waste landfills which have a permitted gas collection system that captures the gas for beneficial reuse to accept yard trimmings. Additionally, 274 contains provisions requested by the division for greater oversight of the inert landfills in Georgia. And finally, there's also a provision that will extend the Solid Waste Trust Fund for 3 years. That is due to expire this year at the end of June, and this bill will preserve that or take that forward for 3 years to 2014. If you look at the bill, and I just found out I'm working off of the bill from yesterday, and I think it may be one line different in the way it's presented, so I'm going to have to watch that. But if you will look at the bill with me, please.
Let's be sure you know what there's a substitute that came out of the subcommittee yesterday, and it should be LC 255855S. I think you're working on the one from yesterday.
Yes, I've got 5844S, and we just changed this very small amount of language, and I realized I think it pushed it one line further down, but I'll be aware of that as we move forward. First of all, if you'll look at the first part there, where we talk about the legislative intent, we're going to talk about each of these provisions to change certain provisions relating to permits for solid waste or special solid waste handling, to change certain provisions related to the number of solid waste facilities within a given area, provisions related to certain cost reimbursement fees and surcharges relative to solid waste, to change certain provisions related to yard trimming disposal restrictions. If you will look with me, please, to first to Section 1, and I believe on your sheet it's going to start on line 23. The intent here, the intent of the General Assembly to encourage beneficial use of yard trimmings and other vegetative matter by composting and other methods of recycling, and return of certain vegetative matter to the soil, and by reuse of yard trimmings to promote bioenergy and renewable energy goals. This section has the effect of encouraging composting and recycling, and also to promote bioenergy and renewable energy production. That is the essence of that particular part of the bill. If you look on the next page, we go over the hierarchy. I've got it right here. Thank you. We list the hierarchy of the methods for handling yard trimmings, and this is where we made the change yesterday. We had it as methods. We go back to using the term hierarchy, and this is per the EPA's soil waste management hierarchy list, and it details those for you at the end of Section 1. Finally, on this, I would like to read for you the Section C there, and I believe it's on line 43. It's actually line 42 on your version, and this is talking about the yard trimmings disposed in a lined landfill having a permitted gas collection system in operation, by which landfill gas is directed to equipment or facilities for beneficial reuse, such as electrical power generation, industrial end use, or other beneficial use promoting renewable energy goals. So this sets up the ability to use the yard trimmings in those landfills, and right now there are 9 landfills in the state of Georgia that this could apply to. There are only 7 of them that would do it at this point in time, because one of them is closing and the other one has another system that they're using. And if I may, to kind of close the loop on this, if I could get you to please look with me at Section 7, and I want to finish up the thought on the yard trimmings, if I may, before I proceed. In Section 7, if you will look on line 155, you will see that it has the word may there. This section gives the control of this to the local governmental bodies. It tells them that they may do this if they wish. If they wish not to, they don't have to. We had a lady yesterday who came from Atlanta to talk about this, and the point I made for her was, if Atlanta does not want to do it, they're not required in any way to do it. It's strictly up to them as to whether or not they would like to do that. The rest of that just goes back over the things we had talked about before. We did some clarification on this in the committee work, so that it does provide that the local government, city, county, or solid waste management authority can use their inert waste landfills, which we'll talk about a little bit later on for that. But that does it. The last few lines there, again, goes back and talks about it being operators of municipal solid waste landfills shall be prohibited from disposing of yard trimmings in municipal solid waste landfills. And this really, what this does is this puts into law, this really institutes a ban. As it is now, this was not really being implemented. So by doing this, we will actually be putting this into law, that this ban is there except for these very specific municipal solid waste landfills. It's limited, it's a local option, and it's there. I would mention that right now there are approximately 50,000 homes that are being powered by landfill gas, and it is a developable, a green, renewable domestic energy source that, as you look at the price of gas and the instability in other parts of the world, I think it behooves us to look at developing that in any way that we can. That concludes now the section on the yard trimmings. If we could, let's move to Section 2, please. At the bottom of page 2, we're looking at the inert waste landfills. At the bottom of page 2, you will see the inert waste landfill defined, and what this is doing is simply putting the current DNR rule definition for inert landfills into law. As you look on to the next page, we'll go to Section 3. In Section 3, it's describing the changes that would be made for the inert waste landfills here. Until January the 1st of 2013, there's no change. But after that date, they would have to they would have to have a valid application on file in order to continue to maintain that inert waste landfill. And then the only changes that they would have to comply with are listed on mine. It's on line 71 and 72.
70, 71.
Okay, 70 and 71. They would have to comply with these 3 new rules. They would have to have defined buffer zones, explosive gases control, and financial assurance. The financial assurance being a bond, if it's not a municipality or a governmental agency, if it's an individual or a corporation, they would have to have a bond that the DNR, that EPD could call on to get the funds to properly close that if it were abandoned, if they did not do that. So those are the only 3 new requirements. If you look at numbers 3 through 13 down the rest of that section, these are simply existing rules that are there now that EPD uses to regulate these landfills. And this is just putting those rules into law. So the summary there is you've got the application process, which would be in place after January 1st of 2013, and then they would have to have that in place by July the 1st of 2014, and you have these rules. The other word I would take you to is, I believe it's on line 75 on mine, where it talks about limited requirements. This will limit the requirements. It's on 74 on yours. These are limited. This would be the only requirements that would be required by EPD. These are taken from rule and being put into law. So that covers Section 3. The final thing at the end of Section 3, on line 106 for you, it would ask for annual reporting rather than quarterly, which is the way it's done now. As we move to Section 4, on line 120, the change there, permit by rule, is stricken. That is how the inert waste landfills have been permitted. That will go away. That just was a way that it was done, where if you had one, you just sent a letter to EPD and said, I've got one, and that's basically how it was done. So that permit by rule will go away, so that's stricken from there. Look with me, if you will, to Section 5. And Section 5 is talking about solid waste disposal facilities and allowing them an incentive for recycling. As it stands now, there's a 75-cent per ton solid waste fee, and this allows any facility any facility permitted exclusively for the disposal of construction demolition waste that conducts recycling activities for construction or demolition materials shall receive a credit towards such surcharges of 75 cents per ton of material recycled at the facility. So that's moving in the way that we want to go to allow an incentive for them to recycle and reuse as much of that material, keep it out of the ground as possible. And finally, Section 6. Section 6 is a 3-year extension of the $1 tire fee. That would go away at the end of June, as it says there. And there was quite a bit of discussion related to this, and the original legislation that I dropped had a provision that would have directed these funds to be used specifically for that tire disposal and cleaning those up. After I dropped the legislation, as we worked through it, it was determined that that is not constitutional for us to do. I went back to the governor's office. We had a discussion on it. They had originally asked for a 5-year extension. I didn't want to go that long. We agreed that we would renew it for 3 years and look for a better solution once we have got it in there. And I would like to direct your attention to this that was in your the solid waste fund fees collected and appropriated that was in your folder. I was not fully aware of how it had worked in the past. I know that the money had been pulled out and used for other purposes in the very difficult budget years, but I think this shows you a pretty good picture of the fact that it has been used effectively, and it has in some instances actually more funds were used than were collected. This year there will be approximately $1,431,000 that will be available for use in that fund. The governor's office has indicated that they are looking at the ability to build that back up and to use it for its intended purposes. So that summarizes Section 6, simply the 3-year extension of the fee there, the tire fee that funds the solid waste the solid waste trust fund. And Madam Chair, that is the essence of the bill, and I would be happy to answer questions if we have any.
All right. This is the proper time to ask questions of the bill's author, and so we're going to try and keep up with the order in which they come. Hold on just a second. And when I call on the number, if you just introduce yourself and then ask your question. We'll try and do one question at a time and then go back around. So, number 10.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. And would like to thank the author for significant improvements in this bill to make it make it at least friendlier through the environmental community, and for explaining some new technology to me.
But believe me, I'm learning as I go as well. So
well, that's good. We're all here to learn. I still have some concern about Section 6, and know that 3 years ago we took a similar action to renew this so-called trust fund, but the trust in my community is diminished significantly about what we do when we put fees on specific uses. And I was hoping we might get a commitment from you that at some future legislative session we would look at a constitutional amendment to ensure that we could reassure the public trust in whether or not the fees are used as they're intended.
I'm not going to commit to a specific course of action, but when I had this discussion with the governor's office, I asked them to, once we get this done, to sit down and take a look at how we might do that, because I, like you, got caught in a jam personally. I was out actually defending this, not knowing exactly how it was done with constituents, and said it was being used for its intended purposes, and then found out that it was not. That's why my initial intent was to try to make that change within this bill. I will pledge that I am going to work on that. I don't know what form it will take, but I've been bitten by it. So when I get bit, it usually gets me. That's how this got into this bill, I will assure you. So. Okay.
We look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Number 3 is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Nix.
Introduce yourself for our video.
Representative Nix, my name is Brian Thomas. I represent House District 100.
And to our listening audience.
Oh, and y'all as well. Sorry. I had an initial question about Section 3, which is, if my understanding is correct, it's putting into law what the EPD rule is currently for landfills. Is that correct?
Yes. For the inert.
For the inert landfills. Yes. My concern and question to you is, why would we want to shift rule into law knowing that it's sometimes more effective to adjust rules through the rulemaking process than a law through the political process? And I just picked one of these elements in here as an example. Number 9 talks about a uniform compact layer of final cover not less than 2 feet in depth in vegetated cover will be placed on blah, blah, blah. Well, what if research then shows us that, 2 feet really isn't adequate and it needs to be a minimum of 4 feet? I mean, it's not hard to imagine that maybe a landfill operator will incur a lot more cost over that, and perhaps that's a constituent of somebody who may be very powerful in the General Assembly, and getting the law changed becomes a political lobbying issue as opposed to a science-based rulemaking process. So could you comment on that?
Well, Representative Thomas, I think that would probably be a great bill for you to carry in a future session.
You mean a bill that removes this Section 3 and puts it back to rulemaking?
Yeah.
Okay, so why didn't we just not change it now so you can avoid all the trauma that I would have to go through to change the law later?
Well, to answer your question, this was really brought by the department. They wanted to have greater control over these inerts. The director himself said that this was one of his big issues. We've got the eternal burning landfills. We've got some of them that are, well, there are a lot of them that they're very unsure as to what's in them or where they are and everything else. So he felt like this was a greater force for him to be able to work with than with the rulemaking process. And this basically came from the department as here. If they wanted to address that, I would be happy to allow that. But this language and this provision came from the department.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And number 13. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Debbie Buckner. I have tried to do a great deal of research on this. This bill is important to me because as a plain old citizen, I lobbied for the original passage of this bill because at the time there were landfills being promoted for my county on all fronts. And so we wanted to really encourage recycling and the separation of inert material and make the municipal landfills last as long as possible and not have to site quite a few more. So it's an important bill to me for that reason, and I'll tell you that up front. I attended the reception for Troup County and LaGrange and talked to county commissioners there to ask them about the process and how well it was working there and how much money was being made and whether or not it was something that they truly felt the need to put the inert waste into the landfill. And they said that we're doing it now, and that's kind of been a base question for me. LaGrange is capturing the methane from the municipal landfill waste right now without the inerts being added. I really am having difficulty understanding why we want to put inerts in landfills that are lined to generate more greenhouse gases like methane.
Well, the answer to that is this. They're generating it anyway, whether or not it's being used. I used the example, and the city manager used the example of the fact when the city collects this, they take it to the county landfill, they chop it up and allow people to come get it if they want it. It usually lies there. All the methane, whatever in it, escapes into the atmosphere. They end up having to take it and pay money to haul it somewhere else and bury it in the ground. So this gives them a way to take that, make a beneficial use of it in a way that they feel like will enhance their production of methane, which enhances their revenue from the production of the methane. And when they're able to sell it, they've got more demand right now than what they can supply with their current recapture system.
I don't think I've asked the question right yet. are you generating methane-powered electricity for a company in your area right now without the yard clippings?
Not exactly as you stated. It's being used. It's being used as gas. It's not generating electricity. This is actually being piped in for use at for Interface and for Milliken. Yes.
So you are able to help those companies, and you don't have to have the yard trimmings in the landfill to help those companies at this time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Number 22.
Tom McCall, Randy.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I kind of have a question. If you look at your little chart you gave out about the tire fees, and I'm kind of following up on Representative Gardner. If you go to a tire store and you ask a guy standing there buying new tires what that dollar's going for, he'll tell you if he knows that he thinks it's going to clean up piles of tires somewhere. And I remember back, probably according to this chart, around 05, 06, there was a big push for a constitutional amendment to dedicate it, because obviously back then it wasn't getting spent where it was supposed to be spent and where the citizens of this state thought it was going. And I hope in the future that it is going to go where it's supposed to go. And I understand budget restrictions, and problems that we got right now, but I hope this bill is going to accelerate it to go toward where everybody thinks that it's going, and not be floating off in the general fund somewhere and not doing. And I have constituents that have problems, but there's no money there to clean up problems that somebody else caused. It wasn't a question; it was a comment. But
Is it not true?
it's not true.
It is, and you're echoing my thoughts too. I was not here in 05. I came in 07, but you're echoing the thoughts that I had. That's why I included this in the bill and initially tried to fix it with the bill. I had language that would have designated it and language that would have completely cut it off if it were not used for what it was supposed to. But it'll take a constitutional amendment to do that, as I understand.
And also, if there is any left over, then they put it back in the general fund.
Yeah.
And not create a slush fund in EPD to do whatever they may want to do with it.
Well, that's one of the things Madam Chair was telling me as I tried to. I was looking at it too simplistically in a way to fix it. There were more variables than I understood at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3, Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman McCall, I just wanted to mention that there is a House Resolution 112 that's been assigned to this committee that will do just that and create a constitutional amendment to dedicate the funds for that, as also along with the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. So that's out there. I'm sure we'll see a lot of movement on it, though. Representative Nix, I had one other question. One of the concerns I've heard from folks is that by allowing yard trimmings to be added to a municipal landfill, that will effectively increase or limit the use life of the landfill, because it's a lot of material that potentially could be coming in. Do you have any estimates of how more quickly that landfills that are going to abide by this law would fill up and then require a new landfill or an expansion of a landfill?
And I can't give you specifics, but I know when this law was originally passed, there was a significant fear that we were going to run out of landfill space. But as I understand now, and as EPD testified the other day, we really are not in a position. We have a very, very large amount of landfill space. But I would address that in this way. These are very, very expensive to build and to use. So those people are going to manage these in the best way possible. I do not see them trying to fill up their landfills with this when they're very, very expensive to do. And the second thing is, it's under the control of the local governments. If they decide that this is filling it up, they can. If they start it, they can stop it. There's no limit. So I would allow them to make that decision as to what it's doing to their landfills.
Thank you.
Representative Nix, I do have one question for you to follow up on that. I think a lot of your committee members were concerned that we were going to be using up the capacity of our existing landfills by doing this, but it was explained technically to us by an EPD person that in fact the collection of the methane gas and using that process creates more space. Could you speak to that or try to speak to that?
Well, when Tom Hall from the city of LaGrange spoke, he talked about the fact that by doing this in the process they go through, it actually causes the landfills to the quicker decay in the landfill. And he said that the process that they're using for the methane recapture itself will extend the life of the landfill because of that. He put a $28 million price tag on it. He said that the biogenerator that recirculates the leachate in there will cause the life of the landfill to be extended for 7 years. And at approximately $4 million a year in the fees that they generate for that, he said that's a $28 million gain for them. So that is that is the way he looks at it as a person who is managing the landfill on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. I see one more question. Then,
actually, Madam
yes.
Chair, I was real interested in that and the fact that this process might extend the life of landfills, and I did some research on it. What I found is that the LaGrange landfill director claimed that it would extend it maybe 7 years. When I talked to people at EPD, they said that that was a little far-reaching and that it might be a year, maybe 2 at the most. But so there is a little extension, but not near what they were predicting in LaGrange.
Thank you. I see no more questions. The chair will entertain motions this time. Yes. Number 11, introduce yourself.
I'm Carla Drenner. I represent District 86. And just since I was in both of the committee hearings, I'd just like to kind of summarize from my perspective. First and foremost, this is an imperfect gas collection system. That is true. However, any and all efforts should be commended that support furthering our development of renewable energy goals in the state of Georgia. Secondly, people who are composting, they would probably continue to do so because they're already in the habit of composting. Thirdly, the city of Atlanta said that they were sending their waste outside the state. So I would suggest that perhaps there's not a market within the state. Next, I would like to commend the fact that you are codifying the inert landfills regulations, and I would request that you consider codifying the interbasin transfer regulations as well. And lastly, I would like to say that the waste disposal companies should continue to recognize that trash to energy is a potential gold mine, that we should be mining the waste and not considering trash, but a commodity and a viable energy source. So with that said, Representative Nix, I am wholeheartedly in support of your bill.
Thank you. Is that in the form of a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
Did you say you're?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that LC 255855S as amended.
It's committee substitute.
It's committee substitute do pass.
Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. Thank you. It did pass. Thank you, Representative Nix. Now, for our committee, we're getting close to what's called the 30th day. To those listening to this meeting, that might not have much significance. To us, it means that everything's backing up behind the dam, and we don't have much time to get things moving forward. So please, to our committee, pay attention to announcements, check your emails. We will keep you up to date as things change. And Michelle Sloan, our secretary, is out sick today. That's why she's not here. Thank you.